All right, ready for our next case?
This is a case for Greg Cormier, DOC 109281. We have Keith Nordyke, attorney, Jacob Johnson, who's the first assistant ADA at Calcasieu. With him, we have Jacob Aber, who's a victim.
All right. Please introduce yourself, state your name and DOC number for the record.
He can. I've got his aide that kind of looks after him most of the time. He's
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Kelsey, this is Keith Nordyke. Can I speak for just a second?
Sure.
Mr. Cormier fell off of a truck about 12 years ago, suffered extensive brain damage. Since that time, about 2 years ago, he suffered a very significant stroke. He is ipsilateral paralyzed on one side, and he has no speech left. I have been able to communicate with him solely by head nods, yes and no. So I give that to you for what it's.
Okay, so you'll communicate. We'll ask you questions here today.
You certainly may. I have met with him in his dorm before the COVID crisis hit, and I know what his wishes are. We're not seeking release to the community here today. We are seeking release to Villa Feliciana only.
Thank you. All right. Gregory Cormier, DOC number 109281, first class offender. Eligibility date 5/21/2004. Good time date 1/20/2041. Full term date 5/11/2098. 115 years. Let's see what we have. Second degree murder, crime against aggravated crime, armed robbery. Okay. We'll let Ms. Wise discuss this today. Go ahead, Ms. Wise.
All right. Good morning. Warden, you said he has an assistant there with him. Did you say?
Yes, ma'am.
What kind of a? Okay. Oh, okay. All right. All right. So, Warden, can you give us any comments that you want to make about Mr. Cormier?
Well, presently he lives in a medical dorm, as Mr. Nordyke explained to you. You know, he's basically not able to do anything, and he has to have care. When he was active and well, he was a lawnmower mechanic, small engine mechanic for us through the years, and that's about all I've got to add.
All right, thank you, Warden. I do want to state on the record, as some of the part of the information that we've received indicates that there is law enforcement opposition to his release, and there's strong victim opposition to his release. And I just want to state that on the record. And there seemed to be and classification. You all help me with this. There was a need for sex offender treatment. He's never had sex offender treatment. Is that correct?
Oh no, we've looked.
Was his initial charge a sex offense and a crime of violence? If it was, he would not be.
Aggravated crime against nature.
Is that what he was convicted of?
Yeah, seemed like I read.
That would be recommended.
Yeah, okay. And so, he has not had an opportunity to take that from what I've reviewed.
And if there's a refusal.
If he hadn't had it before, Ms. Wise, he's not gonna be able to take it now.
That's correct. That's correct. But I didn't. Okay, that was a. I just saw that he needed that. Okay, and so your record showed that he refused it. Like you said, when he had the opportunity to.
Our record shows he refused it, Ms. Wise.
Thank you, sir. And I do want to stay on the record that as a part of his evaluation, he came out as a good in terms of his institutional adjustment. I just wanted to state that on the record. That's all I had. One other question. Has classification approved Villa? Is that something you're going to pursue after today's outcome?
That would be medical.
That would be medical.
So we haven't pursued it yet. We're just gonna wait and see what happens today and then pursue it.
So they grant to medical, if y'all grant him to a medical facility, then we will see about getting him there to a vet.
Okay, gotcha. That's what I wanted to make clear and put on the record. Thank you. That's all I had, Chairman.
Warden or somebody there could help. What is this functional level? I mean, what kid he can't do? Is he wheelchair bound? Can he ambulate? What's going on?
Yeah, he can't walk, he can stand for a couple minutes for a small amount of time. He has to have basically help to shower,
Right.
help to feed himself.
He can feed himself, but he does have to have help when he can't stand over 5 minutes at a time alone by himself, or he will fall and hurt himself, which he has done in present time before. So he has to be assisted after 5 or 10 minutes. You can't leave him alone with nothing at all.
Yeah, round the clock care he needs.
Right.
He lives in the medical dorm.
Okay. Mr. Roche, you have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have no questions.
Okay. Now we will hear from ADA's office, please. Take mute off. Have to take the mute off. The mute's on.
You can hear me now?
Can.
Speak up. Okay. I'm Jacob Abear. I'm the second child of Esther O'Connor, the lady that Mr. Cormier attacked, he and his accomplice. Me, my sister, my brother here, my ex-wife. My ex-wife and I were the first just to give you an overview of what Mr. Cormier done. My ex-wife and I were the first to arrive on scene of the morning of the crime. We saw the devastation this person did. We saw the injuries to our mother had sustained. My mom had been relaxing in her home. She just lay down for the night. It was about 10 p.m. on a Wednesday night. Late night, a knock came to the door and she wouldn't let them in. They were determined to get in, so they kept going around the house trying to find ways of entry until they ultimately made entry, broke into the house. She complied with everything that they demanded of her, but they didn't leave. They chose to stay there and abuse her, or we don't really know exactly how long that they were in the house. We know she laid down about 10 o'clock at night. I got a call at 1:15 in the morning. We rushed over there to find the front screen door hanging from its hinges, and the place had been broken into by he and his accomplice. My mother was nude. From her face was beginning to swell from the beating that she had received from these people, and blood covered the lower 3/4 of her body. There were stab wounds where they had repeatedly stabbed her and poked inside of her abdomen area, and they had taken the knife and from her private area upward sliced her like they was trying to gut her. After 3 hours of being abused, or I'm assuming it was 3 hours, we don't know how long they were in there, but after the time that they spent in there, and she passed out and thinking their job was complete, they left. Apparently her blood pressure dropped low enough. And after, of course, she left the scene, she had passed out in the ambulance, and they had to stabilize her so they could rush her into surgery to try and undo what they had done. The long-term effect of my mother was 10 years later, my mother began to bleed rectally, and she was having abdominal pains. Adhesions had formed inside of her abdomen and because of stab wounds, and it had damaged some internal organs. And After several medical procedures, including surgery, my mother died while me, my brother, and my sister stood by, and we watched helplessly. Right here is a copy of the death certificate that shows that a contributing factor to her death was stab wounds to her abdomen. This person seated before you today was the driving force behind this attack, as told to us by the investigators at the time of the Suffolk Police Department. And we have confidence in the investigators and the investigation they performed. The accomplishments that Mr. Cormier may or may not have done, these happened while he was in a controlled environment. And we feel like maybe that's the only way that he may have made any accomplishments, because he was in a controlled environment. He wasn't a child when this occurred. He was old enough to know better. He was probably about 26 years old when this occurred. He was apprehended, tried, and he was awarded 115 years for what he'd done that night. You may know if he had a juvenile record. I've heard he may have had a juvenile record. He very well may have. My worry is that his advocate will paint a favorable picture for him. I know time marches on. I mean, inmate may say, I'm getting up in years. I know he's going to probably say he's in bad health, and he seems to be in bad health. He may say his parents are no longer with us. I heard his parents had passed away. He'll say he misses his parents, his mom too. Well, I miss my mom too. They went too far when they went in to rob my mom. Their actions were cruel, and it seemed as though they enjoyed it and were callous in their efforts. And all this was done at the expense of my mother. I wonder at what point when you commit a crime, when does one say, this is too much, I've gone too far? When do you stop? How long before one's conscience would say, this is wrong? It's not necessarily your religious conviction or your moral conviction, but a socially acceptable behavior. I asked this panel to defend the weak, because my mom was weak that night. Sometimes confinement is all someone needs, is to keep self-control. I and my family would like Mr. Cormier to stay where he's at in a controlled environment. I'd like to thank the Suffolk Police Department for the investigation and apprehension that they've done. And I'd like to thank the Calhoun Parish District Attorney's Office for a successful prosecution in this case. And that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Mr. Nordyke, would you like to make a statement?
Yes. We are not asking for Greg Cormier to be released to the community. I would note that the co-defendant was in fact released 2 years ago. I see somebody else preparing to speak. If they're going to speak, let me hold my comment.
Okay, I'm sorry. I got it. I apologize. Mr. Jacob Johnson, I apologize.
Yes, my name is Jacob Johnson. I'm the first assistant district attorney here in Calhoun Parish, and we're sharing one computer here in my conference room, so I apologize about the confusion there. I did want to express to you our office's strong opposition to release, whether it be medical or otherwise in this case. Greg Cormier, my review of the evidence shows, was the driving force. He was the attacker, the stabber in this case, who left this lady to die. Greg Cormier, I find this case, and I'll explain to you why I find it especially heinous and why the sentence that was imposed. He got a 115-year sentence. He served 36 years of that, 50 plus 50 plus 15. The aggravated crime against nature, make no mistake, today's law rightfully views that as what is a first-degree rape. He raped a cognitively deficient woman who was 51 years old at knife point. He stabbed her multiple times and he robbed her. That would today be a life without parole sentence. Because it was oral sex at that time, that gave him a 15-year sentence for aggravated crime against nature. But make no mistake, that is the nature of his crime. He knew this woman. personally, and he knew that she was cognitively deficient. She had some mental impairment. She was 51 years old. He attacked her in the dark of the night at knife point and left her for dead. His crime has been especially brutal. Throughout the years, Mr. Cormier has shown a complete and total unwillingness to take any responsibility for his crime. His trial included Mr. Cormier choosing to put on a witness to lie about an alibi. Throughout the years, he's filed numerous motions totally without merit, misrepresented what happened in the trial, misrepresented this crime to the court. And I would suggest to you that if he could speak to you today, I have no reason to believe that he would do anything but misrepresent any sorrow that he's had. So far, throughout the years, Mr. Cormier has refused to accept any responsibility for his crime. He has always refused to apologize for his role in the crime. What I find very startling is that when he had the ability to, he apparently refused any sexual offender treatment while in prison. That is significantly different than his co-defendant, Mr. Owen. Mr. Owen, in later years, did apologize, was active in taking courses while in prison, and bettered himself. Greg Cormier, from what I can understand, didn't do that. Greg Cormier, make no mistake, the investigation showed is the individual who inflicted all of these stab wounds on this poor lady who was cognitively deficient, and that was a significant cause of her death. So our office and law enforcement here locally would be very opposed to parole for this individual, medical or otherwise. I understand that he has some significant issues. I respect that. However, my appreciation of Mr. Cormier's actions and his lack of remorse through the years, I don't believe would justify any modification.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Nordyke.
Greg Cormier's file is the oldest file in my office. I have been representing Greg longer than any other currently active file. It's probably over 12 years old. The information that has been presented is correct. His parents who hired me are dead. I would point out that before I was hired, I misspoke. I thought that the brain damage was only about 10 years ago. Greg had already fallen off the truck and received significant brain damage at the time I was hired, which was 2008 or 9. And I would point out that at that time, I don't believe that the Madison County sex offender program even existed at Angola in 2008 or 9. If it did, Greg certainly could not have participated in it with the frontal lobe damage and the brain damage that he had suffered at that point. I am not asking that Greg be released to the community. I am asking that his imprisonment continue down the road in the Felicianas at Villa Feliciana, a state hospital facility. And we would certainly accept a stipulation that he could not leave that facility without an order of this board. That would be an appropriate way to cabin in and corral that concern. Finally, I do seem to recall, and if I had anticipated this, I would have gone back and reviewed my hearing notes from the 4 other times I've represented Greg. But I do think he has accepted responsibility at the prior hearings. But be that as it may, he's nonverbal now. There's nothing he can do about that. And I would ask that Greg be allowed to go to Villa Feliciana only in order to live out his years. Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Nordyke. Mr. Nordyke, it seems that he earned some certificates in 2012. In January of 2012, he completed Cage of Rage. You was thinking 2008 or 2007 he became disabled?
I know that his brain damage, his initial brain damage, was prior to 2012. We have 2 different episodes, Ms. Wise. First, he fell off a truck and was hospitalized, I want to say 9 weeks, an exceptionally long period of time for a prisoner to be in a hospital. And my recollection of his symptoms were frontal lobish. Then following that, 3-4 years ago, he's had a couple series, that didn't make any sense at all. He's had a couple of strokes, resulting in what you see today: one side paralysis, inability to stand for any length of time, and inability to speak.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir. I see he had hospital stays in April of 2004, about 7 days, and then 7 of 15 to 8 of 15. And then 8 of 19 for a few days. And then June of 20. So there was a big gap between 2004 and 2015 in terms of, according to his transfer screen. So in 2012, I guess he was doing fine. He was in the hospital in 2004, and then he didn't go back until 2015.
He may have gotten out of the hospital, Ms. Wise, but he had the brain damage.
I get that. I totally get that.
Continued.
I totally get that. Yeah, I totally get that. All
And
right.
if I remember right, he stayed there at NGH at Angola for an extended period of time. He may have been off campus for only 7 days, but I think he was at NGH for a very long time afterwards.
All right. I just want to get that clear. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Norday. That's all I had, Chairman.
All right. Gordon, you have any other comments?
No, sir, I don't have anything else.
All right.
I recommend an executive session so that we can discuss confidential matters related to this case.
We have a motion for executive session. Do we have a second?
Yes.
All right, motion is second, roll call. All right, I think we're back here. Okay, is the panel prepared to vote?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, Ms. Wise.
I was on the panel on 10/19 of 17 when we voted to deny his parole at that time due to strong victim opposition and law enforcement opposition. And it appears that that is consistent to the day. So I'm going to maintain and be consistent in my vote. My vote is denied today for the same reasons. And also his refusal for treatment when he had an opportunity to get treatment. The strong victim opposition, law enforcement opposition, it's my vote to deny. That is my vote, Chair.
All right, Mr. Alvin Roche.
Mr. Chairman, based on the offender's need for medical care in a health facility, my vote is to grant his request with some stipulations. Stipulation is that he be granted to the East Louisiana Villa only. And at any time in the future, he is not eligible for housing at the villa, he should automatically be returned to Louisiana State Penitentiary.
All right. Thank you. You have one vote to deny the parole and one vote to grant the parole. Again, listen to taking everything into consideration today from the information that I have in front of me, the information that I read. You know, and I am aware of his brain injury. I'm aware of those problems. It is a little concerning that, you know, when he had an opportunity to take sex offender class, he did not take it. Obviously, his medical condition has changed. Things have changed drastically for him. So my vote today would be a vote to grant him to the Villa Feliciana as well, with the same stipulations stated by Mr. Roche. Again, you know, this is a heinous, awful crime, but as things change, you have to make decisions that we think are best. So my vote would be to grant. So it's 2 votes to grant and 1 to deny. Can Ray, Teresa, where are we on that? Is it a denial?
Because it is a violent and sex offense, it would be a deny.
So 2 votes to grant, 1 vote to deny. Today, your parole's been denied. Thank you. Thank you for being.
Miss Wise. I think Miss Wise might be the most unpredictable of the board members. It's, it's interesting. It's going into the hearing and you just expected it to be a shoo-in. Here's a man who is paralyzed. He can't talk. And I expected it to really just be a routine hearing where they send him to a medical center. And then you have the ADA and the victim show up and describe in that graphic detail of the crime. And the compassion, I think that's the right word, the compassion that I had for him, I felt melt away and turn into, the word that comes to mind is karma. He is suffering. He is living trapped in his broken body in Angola. You might still ask the question, should they have sent him to a better facility that can, just for the idea of human compassion and some type of humanity? Seems that Mr. Roche and Mr. Brennan Kelsey felt that way. But it's something that can certainly be up for debate. Let's go over the crime. Thank you, Richard. At approximately 1:30 a.m. on October 4th, 1982, Lieutenant McCann of the Sulphur Police Department received a call that a woman had been beaten, stabbed, and assaulted by two men. And by that point on the the statement of the ADA, how in those days they considered oral to be just 15 years. That's just that's just 15 years. What's the big deal? It's like I know you can go into a lot of the history of how these laws are written and how, but it is quite bizarre when you think about it. And robbed by two men. Speaking through her son at the hospital, the victim identified one of the assailants as the Owens boy. The son told Lieutenant McCann that at one time Owens resided with Carl Evans in a trailer on North Crocker Street. Acting on this information, the lieutenant sent Officer Johnson and his partner to Evans' trailer to ascertain whether Evans knew where Owens could be found at. At approximately 2:30 a.m., the officers arrived at the trailer and immediately noticed someone peering out of a window. Officer Johnson knocked on the front door and beckoned in a loud voice for the occupants to answer, but got no reply. Lieutenant Carroll knocked on the trailer door, identified himself as a police officer, but was equally unsuccessful in rousing the occupants. Lieutenant Carroll returned to Lieutenant McCann after instructing Officer Johnson and his partner to watch the trailer two doors and allow no one to leave the premises. McCann sent him back to the trailer with instructions to enter if no one responded to his knocking. Lieutenant Carroll was unable to get a response, and at approximately 3 a.m., he and other officers made warrantless entry into the trailer. Interesting. That is interesting. Can you make a warrantless entry into a trailer on... Yeah, I think you could. In eyewitness testimony by someone who's just assaulted by that person. Yeah, that seems like probable cause. But let's see. I'm sure that's part of his appeal. What transpired next to the subject of conflicting testimony? The state maintains that the officers awakened the occupants from their slumber and in the process discovered the presence of two suspects, defendants Owens and Cormier. They contended that no searches or arrests were made until after Carl Evans signed a consent form to search the premises. Approximately 45 minutes after the entry, everyone in the trailer was arrested after a search yielded a small amount of the devil's lettuce and several items missing from the victim's residence. Defendant's version of the incident is somewhat different. They contend that after the police entered the trailer and discovered their presence, everyone inside was arrested, including the owner, Evans. They assert that the police conducted a limited search of their persons and the immediate area before Evans signed the consent form 45 minutes later. I actually believe the defendants in this case. The defendant's assignment of error. Remember, this is when is this? This is 1983. It was decided. So yeah, it happened 1982. I totally believe the defendants in this case. Not that I care that the before police were wearing cameras, they could do pretty much whatever they wanted. It's a whole different world now. The defendant version of the incident different. Okay. The defendant's assignment of error presents the two issues of determination: whether the defendants were adversely affected within the meaning. Page 1272 of our Constitution, and having standing challenge of constitutionality of cease and seizure. He signed the paper anyway, so it's like, Then they go through. The search and seizure occurred inside a private residence of a third party, Carl Evans. It resulted from purely investigatory effort by the police to locate the defendant Owens. The police had good cause to make inquiry with Carl Evans concerning the whereabouts of Evans, since Owens reportedly resided with Evans at one time. Carl Evans could have refused to cooperate with the police when approaching and consented to the search of his home to absolve himself suspicion of the police. The search revealed the presence of the defendants and the incriminating tangible evidence the defendants asked. I didn't pay for this, so this is the free version. I couldn't pay for it either and share it publicly. That would probably be some type of violation. But I think we've seen enough here, and it didn't even go into the terribleness of the crime, of course. What we had described to us by her son was frankly just, barbaric. There's no other way to put it. Completely barbaric. For someone to do that, you have to be locked away for the rest of your life. And just going through, there might be some type of sociological, is that the right word, argument that you might make. Well, there's something about humanity to show compassion by sending them to a special medical ward. They will never get out. They will never harm anyone. But at the same time, it's like, you know what? You do a crime like that, karma is real. Karma sucks. And as long as the family member, where the line is drawn for me is the family member stance. If the family member does not want him to have that type of relief, then you can't give it, because you're going to be putting the victim, you're going to re-victimize the victim at the expense, right? Or because you're selecting the villain so you're going to give the villain compassion and not the victim compassion. And for me, that's where it becomes more of a simple decision. But it was nice to see the ADA there, and nice to see karma play out, because so often it doesn't. With that, I'll let you go.